Hello everyone, welcome to Come Sit at My Table. We sure are appreciative that you're here with us to watch this video today. This is video number 4 in our Super Bowl series this winter. We are doing a different soup every Sunday leading up to the Super Bowl. And our soup today is number 4 in the group of 6 soups. Now, if you want to see the videos for the other soups, you can go to our homepage. Just go onto YouTube and go to our homepage. And at the top, you will see across the top a list of words. I think it's the 4th one over that says playlist. I believe it's videos. I don't know what they are. The 4th one over, I think, is playlist. If you click on the word playlist and scroll down, you'll see one of those groups is called Super Bowl Sunday. And all of our videos from this series will be in that playlist. Today, we are making homemade tomato soup and grilled cheese. So, let's get started and talk about what we're going to use and get our soup on the stove so that we can get it finished. First, we're going to start with 1 large onion that has been diced and 4 tablespoons of butter. Now we want to melt that butter and saute that onion in our stock pot or our Dutch oven until it is kind of translucent. So I'm going to go ahead and start that so that we can have it ready to add our other ingredients when it comes time. So let me get this butter opened. And 4 tablespoons is half of a stick. So you can just cut it in half, or you can use a little guideline on the side. And trust me, it is not going to matter if you get a little too much in it. That's not going to hurt anything. Just put about half the stick in. If we can get this stove to light. And it's not going to. So I'm going to have to move it over here. I don't know why, but that burner has a hard time lighting. By the way, we are still in Florida, as you can tell from our kitchen here. We're in a rental house. And even though we're in Florida being snowbirds, trying to stay out of the Kentucky winter, we still have to eat. And neither one of us are thrilled about eating every meal in a restaurant. So we bring a lot of our kitchen equipment with us. And we cook while we're here. All right, so we're letting that butter begin to melt. And to that butter, we are going to add our onion. I'll go ahead and put that in, let that get started. Now I'm going to grab a spoon right here. And we will get that sauteing. I'm going to turn that up just a hair to get it started. Now, while that starts sauteing and softening those onions, let's talk about what else we're going to use in this soup. All right, I'm just going to let that sit there and start working. Once we get the onions kind of translucent and a little soft, we are going to add 3 teaspoons of minced garlic. Now, if you have whole garlic cloves and you want to mince your own, you would need to use about 3 cloves. We're also going to use 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, and we will add that in with the garlic and let that cook for just a minute or 2. And by doing that, what we're doing is making a roux to help thicken our soup a little bit. You don't want tomato soup to be really thick. You don't want it to be like a stew, but you don't want it watery either. So just a little bit of flour, about 1/4 cup, will help thicken it enough that it's not too watery. Now our next ingredient is a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. I like using crushed tomatoes because you don't have to blend them after you've made your soup. If you use whole tomatoes or diced tomatoes, you're going to have to either use a stick blender like an immersion blender or a regular blender that you would pour it into and you know, blend it up, or a, what do we use, Melissa? Like to chop things in. Oh my gosh, I've just drawn a blank. Anyway, if you use crushed tomatoes, you don't have to blend it up. So you can just use those. Now this time of year, January, February, you're not going to find really good ripe tomatoes to do this with fresh tomatoes. So canned tomatoes are a great option for making homemade tomato soup. With the crushed tomatoes, we're going to add a 15-ounce can of tomato sauce. And we're going to add 2 quarts of tomato juice. Now I'm using our home canned tomato juice. I brought that with us because I knew we were going to be making tomato soup. But if you want to buy canned tomato juice, you're going to need about 64 ounces to equal 2 quarts. Also, we're going to add 3 tablespoons of sugar, and this is just regular white granulated sugar. You may need a little more depending on the tomatoes. Tomatoes are acidic, and the sugar just helps balance out that acidity. It's not in there for sweetness, but it could lend a little sweetness to your soup, but it's really in there to counteract that acidity in the tomatoes. You might want to go up to as much as 6 tablespoons of sugar, depending on how acidic your tomatoes are. I would start with 3 and work my way up. You can wait until the soup's completely made and taste it. And if it's too acidic, you could always add another tablespoon or 2 or 3, whatever you think you need. For this amount of soup, I probably would not go over 6 tablespoons, but I'm starting with 3. Now, the next thing we're adding is chicken flavored base. I get this at our local Mennonite market in our little town in Kentucky. I'm assuming it's available in most places. If you can't find chicken flavored base, you can use chicken bouillon cubes. I'm going to use 2 tablespoons, at least to start with. If you're using the chicken bouillon cubes, you would use 2 of those. So either one of those works just fine. Now after we get all that mixed in, we are going to put in 1 pint of heavy cream. We will put in 1 tablespoon of basil, and that's dried basil. If you have fresh, of course, feel free to use that. We're going to use 1 teaspoon of salt and just a pinch or 2 of white pepper. If you don't have white pepper, black pepper works just fine. Either one of those is okay. And if you don't want to put any salt and pepper in, you don't have to do that. That's up to you. All right, let's check our onions. They are cooking. I can really smell them. You do want to let those cook for just a few minutes because you do want them to soften up. Since we're using the crushed tomatoes and not blending it in a blender or a food processor. There's what I was trying to think of a minute ago. If you're not using a blender or a food processor or a hand stick blender, an immersion blender, then you're going to need these onions to be good and soft. You don't want big hard chunks of onion. So let those cook for a few minutes. You do not want to add the garlic in while you're cooking these at first because garlic burns very quickly. So you want your onions to be really close to being done before you add in that garlic. Once you put that garlic in, you can only cook it for a minute or 2 and then it will start to burn. So make sure you don't put that garlic in when you first put the onions in. Let those onions go in with that butter first and start to cook. Okay, let me grab the garlic and flour. So I'm going to start with the garlic, and we're going to put in 3 teaspoons. Now, if you're not a garlic lover, I'm going to turn that down just a hair since I'm getting ready to put the garlic in. If you're not a big garlic lover, you don't have to put 3 teaspoons in. Cut it to 1 or 2. If you are a huge garlic lover, then increase it. Put in whatever amount you like. You probably wouldn't go a whole lot more than, I don't know, probably not more than 4, 5, 6 at the very most, because you don't want it to be garlic soup. But we think 3 is just the right amount. And now I'm going to sprinkle in my flour to soak up that butter and those juices.
Someone in a past video was unfamiliar with the word roux.
Okay. A roux is just a mixture of fat and flour. You can use butter, you can use bacon grease, you can use whatever, any kind of fat melted, and then you stir in your flour and let that cook, and it does need to cook for a minute or so to cook off that raw flour taste. Otherwise, your dish is going to taste like raw flour. And the whole purpose of a roux is to help thicken the sauce in your dish. Whether it's a stew or a soup or a gravy or whatever you're making that you're adding a roux to, it just helps to thicken it so it's not so runny. And you do have to be careful. You know, if you don't use enough flour, then it's not going to thicken your dish. But if you use too much, then you're going to have a really thick, lumpy sauce, and you don't want that either. So, all right, so we have cooked our onions, garlic, and butter with the flour. So now we're going to start adding our tomatoes. And we want to get all that out of there. But I'm going to go ahead and get my tomato juice in before I scrape those, because we want that stirred in and not to burn. I'm going to turn this down just a little bit, well, a whole lot, and get my tomatoes in there and my juice. Tomato juice. I'll tell you, this is absolutely delicious tomato juice, even if I did can it myself. It's quite a job, isn't it, babe?
It is a job for us to can the tomatoes and the tomato juice. But it really is good.
We wash them, and Melissa cuts them all up into chunks, and then I put them through the mill to juice them. And then we can it. We try to do tomato juice at least every other year if we can. I cannot use this spoon.
That one was at the house.
This is one that was already here, and it is very flimsy and does not work well. I think this one might be. This is also one from here, but it's more sturdy, so I'm going to use it. Okay. So we have our tomato juice, our tomato sauce, and our crushed tomatoes in. Let's make sure that's all out of there. Ooh, I just splashed it. Okay. This is what I want to get everything out of. All those tomatoes need to go in. Okay? Now, I'm going to turn this back up and let it start to come to a boil. The only way to get that roux to thicken your soup is to bring it to a boil. You don't have to boil it hard. It just has to get hot enough for that roux to thicken it. All right, and while that's coming up to heat, I will add the rest of our things. Let's put in our sugar. And we may have to add more of this after a while. All right, we have that in. And we need need our chicken flavored base in, or bouillon cubes if you're using bouillon cubes. And I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons. After I taste it, I may need more, but I think 2 will be just about right. I don't think I had either one of those full, so I'm going to put just a smidge more. We will taste that after we finish it, and if I feel like it needs more, we can always add some. And I'm going to skip the heavy cream. Go ahead and put in my basil. And our salt. And I'm only going to use 1 teaspoon to start with. If you don't want salt in it, you do not have to use it. If you're somebody who's watching their salt intake, then don't use it. But in my opinion, tomatoes have to have salt to taste right. And then I'm using white pepper just so I don't have flakes of black floating in my soup. And I just am going to put a pinch or 2 to start with. Actually, I think I'm going to need a little more than that. That wasn't quite 2 pinches. Okay. We'll see if we need more of that too. All right, now we're going to let this come up to a boil, a soft boil, slow boil, and then we will come back and let you see what it looks like. We'll have to add in our cream. I forgot about that. We definitely want to add our cream in. So let's do that before we go. Let me grab that cream. I may not put all of this in to start with. Just need to put enough in to kind of make it creamy and lighten the color a little bit. So let's see. See how much we need. That's about 1 cup of it. Oh, I think that's good. What do you think about that color?
I don't think I would want it lighter. I think that looks beautiful.
Okay.
It sure smells good too.
That's about 1 cup. Of course, you can put more if you want. Looks really good. But we need to bring it up to heat. So let us keep heating it. And once it's warm enough, we will come back and taste it. And then we're going to make bacon grilled cheese. Yum. We'll be right back. Now that our soup is heated through and it's about ready to eat, we're going to start our bacon grilled cheese sandwich. We're just going to use some thick sliced white bread. This is Nature's Own. And some softened butter. And then the cheeses that we're using today are Munster and American cheese. Yellow American cheese. And then we have taken some thick cut bacon and just chopped it up, cut it up with scissors, and fried it in a skillet. Now I've already taken my 2 pieces of bread and buttered those, and they're in my skillet. So I'm going to just put those on the heat. Let's see here. Make sure.
Got it to work this time.
Yeah, I finally got it to come on. Took me a couple of minutes, but I got it. So we're going to put a couple of pieces of each kind of cheese on our sandwich. Get that paper out from between them. We'll put one there and one there. And now before I put on my other cheese, I'm just going to put some fried bacon on there. And you don't want a lot because you don't want it falling off, but you want some in every bite. And of course, if you don't want bacon on your grilled cheese, you don't have to do that, but I can't imagine why you wouldn't. It's delicious on there. And then we'll just take a couple of slices of American cheese, if I can get it out of here. And put that right on top of our bacon. Top it with our other piece of bread. And let that kind of get brown on one side, the cheese start to melt, and then we'll flip it over and grill the other side. Now, normally at home, I would put a lid on this. But I don't have a lid for this skillet here, and I can't find one to fit. So, we're just going to have to do it without a lid on it today. But if you have a lid to fit your skillet, it will help that cheese to melt a little better and help it to brown up. So let us continue to cook this, and when we're ready to flip it, we will come back and let you see what it looks like. Our grilled cheese is nice and toasted and melted. So we're going to take it off the fire and put it onto our plate. And of course, because I'm still a 6-year-old at heart, I have to cut my sandwich in half. All right. Look at that. Yum. Okay. Now, I know I told you that because we were using crushed tomatoes, we wouldn't have to blend our soup, and you don't. But there are going to be some pieces of onion that have not cooked up. There are going to be some small chunks of tomato in it, and that does not bother us at all. In fact, we kind of like our tomato soup that way. We like to be able to see the tomato and onion in it. But while we were fixing the grilled cheese, we thought, well, maybe there are people who would rather have it blended and not have chunks of tomato and onion. So we decided we will do the immersion blender just to show you. So you don't want to start your immersion blender when it's out of the soup. Otherwise, when it hits the soup, it's going to throw it. So you want to go in the soup and then turn it on and just blend it like this. Keep it down near the bottom. You can tip it a little bit so it will pull those tomatoes and onions in there to blend. But you just want to make sure you keep it down there. You don't want to pull it up out of the soup or it's going to splatter. Woo, I got that too high, just like that. So our daughters bought me this new immersion blender, I think for my birthday this year. And it's a really nice one. I really like it. And it makes doing things like tomato soup or anything where you have to blend it, makes it really easy to do. All right, I think that's plenty. And even though we like it a little chunky, it's not going to be too chunky today. But I just wanted you to see how you could do it. It makes really short work of it if you have an immersion blender. All right, I'm going to scrape as much of this off the sides as I can and get that down in the soup. And then we're going to dish us up a bowl. Stir that around some. And let me show you here. You can see how smooth that is. See, there's nothing in there. It just runs right through. There's a little speck of a tomato right there. But for the most part, that immersion blender did its job. But now don't feel like you have to do that because we normally don't do that. We like the chunks in ours. Let me grab a ladle. We will ladle up some soup and let me grab the bowl from behind you, baby. All right. So here is our tomato soup. By the way, you will need to check yours for sweetness and for salt and pepper. So you can decide if it needs more or if it's okay the way it is. That's really hot. I don't know if I can do this. Should have let it cool a little bit first, shouldn't I?
Matches your shirt.
I know the answer to this already, but I'm still going to ask. Do you want the first bite?
No, it's way too hard to eat soup like
I
this.
know. Wow. That is really good. It's so good. That's delicious. And of course, I have to have a bite of grilled cheese, don't I? I'm telling you, the bacon completely changes it. Bacon on grilled cheese is fantastic. Don't feel like you have to do that, but it's delicious. Yum. All right. This is a great winter meal. Good comfort food. Really easy to put together. Easy to do. Comes together quickly. I think if you'll try the bacon on the grilled cheese, you'll love it. The soup is really easy to make, so give it a try. Thank you so much for watching our video. We do appreciate it. Remember, you can click on that playlist at the top, and it will show you all the soups in our Super Bowl series this winter. Super, S-O-U-P-E-R, Super Bowl soups that we're doing in this series. All right. If you would, go right below this video and give us a thumbs up. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button. And one thing you can really do to help us is hit that share button and share it with your friends and family. Remember that right under the video, where you see the title, it will say homemade tomato soup and bacon grilled cheese or something like that. If you click that title, that box will expand. Melissa always puts the written recipes, and she'll put both of these in there. And then our contact information is at the bottom of that box. Thank you for the comments. We do appreciate you posting those, and we enjoy reading them. So keep posting. We love to see and read what you say. Remember, you are always welcome to come sit at my table. Have a great day.